Hey guys, it's Spetbees again from Mary B. Austin, 3rd grade, and I'm going to be teaching you some math now. So I want to start by telling you what we're going to be doing today. Okay, so we are going to be our goal by the end of this lesson is to be able to fluently multiply and divide within 100 using strategies such as relationships between multiplication and division. So this year in 3rd grade, we have all learned how to multiply numbers. We've all learned how to divide numbers. So now what we want to do is we want to become fluent at being able to do that in a more timely manner, okay? Because as we move forward into 4th grade, we're going to need to be more fluent with multiplication and division in order to be successful with some of those math problems that are going to involve multiplication and division and more than one step through the process. So we're going to review this and see if you guys can remember some of these things, and then I'm going to share with you some activities that you could do at home to just with things laying around your house that you could do to just practice this skill a little bit more. So I want you to think about a question for just a minute. Okay, what are some strategies that you've learned to help you become more fluent with multiplication and division this year? So outside of learning what multiplication and division are, what are some strategies that your teachers have taught you this year? So I know some that I've taught my kids and that I'm sure many of your teachers have taught you are to use fact families, which is something that you have already been familiar with for many years with addition and subtraction in 1st grade and 2nd grade, and then now we make that connection with multiplication and division here in 3rd grade. So fact families are a big one, and then also the properties of multiplication, especially that commutative property, that's a big one to help you become more fluent with your multiplication. And then just taking those things and really connecting, how does multiplication relate to division? Okay, so those are the things we're going to look at and review today. All right, so up here on this poster, I have taken some numbers, and we're going to look really closely at these numbers, okay? So what are the relationships that you can see between 3 numbers? The 3 numbers I want you to think about are 6, 4, and 24. Okay, think about those for just a minute. If you look up here, I put little clip art pictures so that you could visualize and you would be able to see it a little bit better instead of trying to do it all in your head. So we have 6 sunshines here. We have 4 suns here. And if we also have 24 sunshines here. Okay, so when we look at that, what are some things that you can notice about those numbers? Look at each of them. Okay, so you might have noticed that 4 was the least, smallest amount because we see the least number of suns. Okay, so we can say that 6 and 24 are greater than 4. You might have noticed that 24 is much greater than 6 or 4 by itself. Okay, so those are some things you might have noticed. Well, now I'm going to get you to look at some things specifically. I want you to look for those relationships, okay? And there are 4 relationships that these numbers have, okay? And so we're going to look first at these relationships, okay? And so when we look here, we see something that we've learned about before, and that is called who can guess it? An array. You're right, it looks like an array. I see rows, I see columns, and so I can use that array to help me do my multiplication, help me to visualize and be able to see that, okay? Now, something I do want to point out to you is that if you don't have, pictures or something to look at, I'm going to share with you some tools and some manipulatives that you could create at home that you might just have laying around your house since we're not at school to provide those for you. All right, so when I look at this array, I have 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 4 rows of 6 suns. So if I have 4 rows of 6, then I could skip count by 6s 4 times, and get, say, 6, 12, 18, 24. Or when I'm multiplying by 4, something that I could do easily is double. So if I know that 6 plus 6 is 12, double these 2 rows, that's 12. Double these 2 rows, that's another 12. And 12 plus 12 gives me 24. So I'm still using that repeated addition strategy if I'm not good at skip counting by 6s just yet. But that's what we do want to get better at, and I'm hoping that this will help us. All right, now, the commutative property is when we take the 2 factors, the 2 numbers that we're multiplying together, and we flip-flop them. So it's like we took this right here, and we turned it, we rotated it sideways, and now in this model, we see 4 in each row, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. So 6 rows of 4. Well, 6 rows of 4 and 4 rows of 6 both give me 24. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. Okay, so going back to that commutative property that we've learned, it's just taking those factors and flip-flopping them. And when you flip-flop them, you still get the same amount. We're not adding to anything. We're not taking anything away. We're just reversing the numbers, and it still represents here 4 groups of 6 is 24, and here 6 groups of 4 is also going to give me 24. The way that that's helpful to you is you might be better at skip counting by 4s as opposed to 6s, or 6s as opposed to 4s. So you can use that strategy to help you move a little bit faster and be more fluent with finding the answer to those multiplication problems. So 2 relationships are multiplication sentences. The next 2 relationships are division sentences, okay? So here, if I had 4 groups of 6 gave me 24, then if I take 24 and I split it into 4, divide it into 4 groups that are equal, I have 6 in each group. So 24 divided by 4 is going to equal 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in each. Okay? And here, again, we took that same model, rotated it. It's the same one that you see over here. And you have, again, we have 24, and you are now dividing it equally into 6 groups, and there are 4 now in each of those groups. So let's look at how these are related. So here, 4 groups of 6 is 24. If I take those 24, split them into 4 groups, I'm going to have 6 in each of those groups, okay? If I have 6 times 4, 6 groups of 4, that gives me 24, and I can take that whole amount and divide it up into 6 equal groups of 4. So do you see how they're related? We took our product here of 24 when we divided, and then we divided it by one of the 2 factors, and it gave us the other factor. Do you see that? Okay, so this is how fact families come to be. Okay, we're going to focus on that fact family strategy here for just a minute, and I'm tying in that commutative property with it. So I'm going to take our information from up here and put it in a fact family. Now, I put it in a little house because families usually live in a house, obviously, together, and so that's where that house representation comes from, and it's something that you're familiar with. It's something that you've seen a lot in your 1st and 2nd grade years, so I wanted to make the same connection here for you guys today. So I'm going to take these 4 number sentences and put them down here. So 4 times 6 equals 24. The commutative property, flip-flop those factors. 6 times 4 equals 24. 24 divided by 4 gave us 6 in each group. And 24 divided into 6 groups gave us 4 in each group. Okay? So a fact family is when you use the same 3 numbers to create 4 different number sentences. You see that? Okay, and then we just discussed how they were related. How does multiplication connect to division? okay? How are they related? Let's try some more fact families. Okay, so I've got the number 7 and the number 5. Okay, well, to figure out my third number, I've got to multiply these and figure out what would I get. So if I have 7 and 5, I could put this in either order. I could say 7 times 5 or 5 times 7. So those would be my two multiplication sentences to go with this one. Now let's figure out what that answer would be. What would the product be? Now, most of us are really good at counting by fives. Okay, so my suggestion would be to count by fives regardless of the order. Here it means I have 7 groups of 5, so I would count by fives. Here it means I have 5 groups of 7, so I would be skip counting by 7 5 times. Well, in my head, to do this fluently, let's just skip count by 5 7 times, and it's going to tell me the answer for both. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. So 7 times 5 is 35, and 5 times 7 would also give me 35. Okay, so now we want to relate that to division. Well, if we took our whole amount of 35 and we divided it, because remember, our fact families have to use the same 3 numbers, okay? And so we would have 35. We could split 35 into 5 groups. And if we split 35 into 5 different groups, we would have 7, if I use that knowledge of my relationship, okay? If I have 35 and I divide it into 7 groups, I'm dividing it now between more spaces, so I'm going to come out with a smaller answer, and that is correct, of 5, okay? I would have 5 in each of those groups. Now, something that I do want to show you. So for some of us, we're still not necessarily fluent with this. That's what we're trying to build. Some of us might still need a tool, a manipulative to help us. And so I want you to really think about what are some things you might have at home, okay? I had to do this last night because I was thinking, goodness, what could I do? What can I show these kids that they have at their house? Because I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I don't have all of my teaching materials at home with me, so I'm trying to improvise. So I want you to make sure that you do the same thing. So something that popped into my head was popcorn, okay? My kids love popcorn, and popcorn makes a lot. And some of our numbers in 3rd grade are a little bit bigger. They're greater than like 10 or 20. And so we might need more pieces. So if I was working with this amount right here, okay, I had 7 and I had 5, okay, I wanted to multiply those so I could either make 7 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 7. So let's make 7 groups of 5 because we said it was easier to count by 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my 6th group. I need 1 more because I needed 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to double check it. I have 5 in each group. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I have 7 groups of 5. So if I didn't know how to skip count by 5s really well, then I could do something like this. Or let's say I'm not good at making the connection right now between that commutative property and I wanted to have 5 groups of 7. I can do that and look how much popcorn I still have left over, okay? The biggest thing you have to watch out for is some of those pieces break easily, so don't catch yourself with that. So then after we get all of our groups, we know in multiplication we have our number of groups, how many are in each of those groups, and we repeatedly add those, put them all together to get our whole amount. And so we had 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, okay, which is what we got here. So now I would like for you to just start thinking about what's something at home that you might have that you could use, okay, if you don't have popcorn, because you're going to need it throughout this time for math to kind of help you. All right, so another tool that you might know of that could help you with multiplication is a multiplication chart, okay, a little table. And so the way that this works, you've probably been introduced to one, but you may or may not have one at your house. If you have one at your house, I'm going to quickly remind you of how you would use it. So you have numbers 1 through 10 going across the top and numbers 1 through 10 going down, okay? You take the number from the column, so I have 1 and 1, and where those two meet and come together, give us our product. Okay, so 1 times 1 is 1. Let's do another one. Let's do 5 and 7, since that's the one we we're just working on. Well, if I go down and where 5 and 7 meet, I have the number 35, which is what we got up here. So you could use that tool. All right, I made a list of some other things that we might want to use. Beans, cotton balls, maybe you have M&Ms or Skittles at your house. I know we just had Easter yesterday, so you might have some little candies, maybe some jelly beans, popcorn. If you have a small cereal, like Cheerios or something small, those are some things that you might want to use as a manipulative, okay, to help you. But just keep in mind, you want your pieces to be kind of small because some of our numbers get a little bit larger when we multiply by nines and things like that. So I'm going to show you how to play a game at your house to take what we've been learning about fact families today and really be able to practice it in hopes of becoming more fluent with your ability to multiply and to divide and to see that relationship and see how multiplication and division are truly related like we saw up here today. All right, so you need a couple of materials, okay? You need a dice, okay? Or we like to call it a number cube, okay? Something else that you could do is if you don't have a number cube at home, I went into some of my children's games. So if you have a game at home that has a number cube in it, then that is a place where you could find one. But if you don't have that, you can still do this activity. You can take a piece of paper, fold it in half a second time, and then one more time, a third time. Forgot my paper over here. So you could do that, and then you would put numbers on it. So on my dice, because we're in 3rd grade and most of us know how to multiply by 1, we're pretty good by now at skip counting by 2s. 3s, some of us are pretty good at it. Some of us might still be having trouble with that. But I want to challenge you to use some larger numbers. If you still feel like you need 1, 2, and 3, use them. But what I did on my number cube is where it had the number 1, I wrote a 7. Where it had a 2, I put an 8. And where it had a 3, I put a 9, so that I could use some of those larger numbers and get used to those, because those are the ones that we have trouble with being able to fluently multiply and divide. They're just a little bit more difficult. We're not as familiar with them. So what you're going to do is you are going to roll your dice, or if you have the numbers, you're going to fold those numbers up. You're going to put them in a bowl or a paper bag, okay? And you're going to just pull a number out. Again, if you're doing paper, you're going to have 8 squares once you fold it up. So you could do, you could do 1 to 8, or you could do, again, start at 4 and go up from there and use some of those larger numbers to challenge yourself, okay? But you're going to pull out a number, okay? Or you're going to roll a dice to get a number. So the first number I got was 7, okay? So I got 7. Then you're going to roll the dice again, okay? Roll your number cube again. This time I got 8, okay? So if you have the numbers in the bag, go ahead and grab a second number out, okay? Then we're going to take these 2 numbers and we're going to create a fact family with them to practice what we've been practicing up here. The number cube and the number pieces of paper are just helping me to get those numbers. Something else that you could use is a deck of cards. You could take a deck of cards. I would take out your face cards, and those are your ones that are the ace, king, queen, jack, joker, and just have your numbers in there, and you could flip over 2 cards. Here I got 9 and 5, okay? So it's kind of up to you how you want to do it. I'm just trying to show you different things. You might have a deck of cards at your house, and you can do so many fun things with math with a deck of cards. Okay, so now after you get your two numbers, we're going to create a fact family. All right, well, we know that we are looking for 4 relationships, 2 multiplication and 2 division. Okay, so if you have 7 groups of 8, okay, the commutative property, the flip-flop, would be 8 groups of 7. Okay, so if we multiply those two numbers, what do we get? I want you to see if you can get that math. If not, you might want to use your popcorn or something else to try to find your answer. I'm going to give you just a minute to see if you can get it. Okay, so you should have gotten 56. Okay, so 7 times 8 is 56. Okay, and then 8 times 7 would also be 56. Well, then you have 56 for your division. If you divided that 56 into 8 groups, you would have 7 in each of those, because remember our relationship from up here. If we had 4 groups of 6 to give us 24, if we took the 24, split it into 4 groups, there's going to be 6 in there. Okay, so if I have 56 and I split them into 8 groups, I'm going to have 7. If I have 56 and this time I decide to split it into 7 groups, I'm going to have 8. Okay, so again, I'm using the same 3 numbers the whole time to create a fact family to help me to see the relationship between the multiplication and division. So I encourage you, this is something you can do by yourself. If you have a brother or sister and they want to play, you could play it with them. They could do it with addition and subtraction if they're younger than you. So just practice this skill to really help you to be able to become more fluent with multiplying and dividing. So I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll be able to play this at home later today. Have a good one. I'll see you Thursday with another fun activity.